The throne room of the Celestari Empire had once been a place of reverence. Golden spires, crystalline walls that pulsed with living light, and an air thick with a scent of ionized energy that marked the seat of a civilization thousands of years older than Earth itself. Now, however, it was silent. The great court was empty. And in the center of that silence stood Princess Xylia, abandoned. Her father, the Emperor, was dead, murdered by his closest counselors in a coup carried out with surgical precision. The new regime had no need for the Emperor's only daughter. Worse, they branded her a curse of bloodline, a symbol that might rally loyalists. Execution would make her a martyr. Exile, however, stripped her of her power while keeping her alive in humiliation. She was cast down, left on Vera 9, a frontier planet riddled with storms and prowling predators. Court emissaries made it clear. She was no longer of the blood. She was to die alone, forgotten. The alien nobles and soldiers who once pledged their lives to her lineage would not dare approach her. Any act of sympathy toward the princess now meant death by disintegration at the hands of the new rulers. Fear spread like wildfire through the settlements surrounding the abandoned palace where she was left. Locals avoided her as if she carried a plague. Xylia sat on the cracked steps of her once grand citadel, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the twilight storm, her regal robes torn and spattered with dust. Every passerby crossed the street, every trader turned away. Even the guards stationed to monitor her did not meet her gaze. For the first time in her life, she was utterly alone. But humanity was not like the others. From Earth's perspective, the Celestari Empire was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, an ancient civilization with ships that bent space like silk and weapons that turned moons to ash. Humans had only recently joined the Galactic community, seen as reckless upstarts with too much heart and too little sense. They were tolerated, mocked for their fragility, but also feared for their defiance. It was in this tense environment that Captain Darius Kane, a human soldier-turned-wanderer, stepped off a battered transport ship on Vera 9. His armor, an outdated but heavily modified set of Terran combat exosuit, was scratched and scorched from wars he'd rather not remember. Unlike the other species who glanced once at the abandoned princess and quickly looked away, Darius did not avert his eyes. He saw her sitting there, surrounded by emptiness and disdain. He saw something every human instinct screamed against. An individual left to die not because of her crimes, but because fear had chained the hearts of those around her. Darius remembered Earth's history. The betrayals, the fallen kings and queens, the revolutions that came when humanity refused to let injustice stand. Something in the scene before him pulled at the deepest threads of that legacy. And so, against the whispered warnings of the locals, against the fearful stares of merchants and travelers, Darius stepped forward. The sound of his armored boots echoed across the empty plaza as he approached. The guards stiffened, one raising a hand to warn him back. "No closer, human," one hissed in a synthesized voice, their plasma rifle trained lazily in his direction. "She is marked. She is to remain untouched." But Darius didn't stop. He lifted his helmet, locking eyes with the princess. His voice was calm, steady, yet carried a weight that silenced the murmurs of the watching crowd. "She doesn't need to be touched," he said, his Terran accent sharp against the alien tongue. "She needs to be seen." The princess blinked, her alien pupils contracting in disbelief. No one had spoken to her since her exile began, only around her as if she were already dead. Darius closed the final distance until he stood a few feet before her. He dropped to one knee, not in submission but in solidarity. From a pouch in his armor, he pulled a ration pack, the seal hissing as it opened. He placed it before her without ceremony. "I don't know you," he admitted plainly. "I don't know your wars, your politics, or what crime you've been accused of. But I know what it means to be left behind. And I won't walk past someone who's been thrown away." The plaza went silent. The guards exchanged nervous glances, uncertain whether to intervene. The locals whispered in disbelief. A human was defying the edict right in front of them. For Xylia, the moment was more staggering than any battlefield. She had expected mockery, cruelty, or indifference. Instead, this fragile, short-lived species, a man from a world barely scratching the stars, had dared to break the unspoken barrier that no other being in the galaxy would cross. Her voice was quiet, almost breaking. "You do not fear me?" Darius smiled faintly, the kind of smile that held both humor and defiance. "Princess, I've faced plasma storms, bioweapons, and an entire fleet of machines that wanted my bones for spare parts. What's one abandoned royal compared to that?" A ripple of laughter, half nervous, half awed, moved through the crowd. For the first time, Xylia felt something she thought she had lost: dignity. Humanity had given it back with nothing more than presence and courage. That day became legend. The chronicles would later describe it as a spark, the moment a human knelt before an abandoned alien princess and, without fear, restored her from exile in the hearts of the people. The nobles called him reckless. The soldiers called him foolish. But to Xylia, and eventually to countless others across the galaxy, Darius Kane was known as the man who stepped forward when all others kept their distance. And that single act of courage would ripple outward, reshaping the destiny of both human and Celestari alike. Word of the humans' defiance spread faster than any official decree. By nightfall, holoscreens across Vera 9 replayed the footage captured by locals. A Terran soldier, kneeling before the disgraced princess, offering food and defying the unspoken fear that paralyzed the galaxy. For the Celestari nobles, it was an insult. For the guards stationed at the plaza, it was a dilemma. They were ordered not to kill the princess, but this human had made her visible again. For the scattered people who had once served her, it was a shock of hope they dared not admit aloud. And for Princess Xylia, it was a puzzle she couldn't untangle. Humans were young, short-lived, unrefined. The Celestari had always regarded them as dangerous only in their recklessness. Yet this Darius Kane, had not acted out of lust for power, nor to earn her favor, nor even to spite her enemies. He had acted because something in his species would not let him do otherwise. Darius, meanwhile, was not finished. The following day, while alien traders and citizens continued to skirt around the plaza, he remained at the princess's side. He unpacked his gear, a battered Terran Mark IV exosuit, its plates scarred from old battles, and a collection of tools that looked more like junkyard scraps than weapons of war. He sat cross-legged before her like a mechanic tinkering with an old speeder, welding sparks bouncing across the cracked tiles. The princess watched him in silence until curiosity finally overcame her pride. "You patch old machines as if they were soldiers," she remarked, her voice tinged with both disdain and wonder. Darius didn't look up, tightening a coil in the armor's servo brace. "Machines kept me alive when soldiers didn't. You learn to trust what doesn't lie." Xylia tilted her head. Among her kind, damaged tech was discarded, replaced with something new from the Empire's endless reserves. But this human saw worth in the broken. He saw use where others saw weakness. When the first wave of assassins came that night, it was this mindset that saved them. They arrived cloaked, shadows slipping across the storm-lit courtyard. The princess stirred, sensing danger in her blood. Before she could cry out, Darius was already moving. His armor clamped into place with a hiss. his neural link activating a swarm of micro-drones that had been sleeping in their launch canister. They weren't sleek Celestari hunter-killers. They were cobbled together from battlefield salvage, their metal uneven, their optics cracked. But under Darius's control, they moved like a school of predators, buzzing, darting, striking with precision. The assassins uncloaked as the drones tore through their phase shields, sparks showering in the dark. Plasma blades hummed as alien killers lunged toward the princess. Darius met them head-on. His exosuit wasn't the most advanced in the galaxy, but it had something no Celestari armor possessed: Terran adaptability. With each strike, the armor adjusted its servo resistance. With every plasma flash, the onboard AI recalibrated shielding patterns to absorb more energy. Darius fought like a man born in chaos, moving with brutal creativity. He didn't fight as the aliens did, relying on ancient forms or perfectly honed patterns. He improvised. He hurled a drone like a grenade, ducked under a blade to slam his knee into an enemy's ribs, and even ripped a sparking panel from his armor to smash into another's face. The princess watched stunned. Her people prized precision, perfection, legacy. The human fought with none of those things, and yet he prevailed. When the last assassin fell, writhing under the drone's discharge arcs, Darius simply deactivated his suit with a grunt. Sparks hissed from his left shoulder plate where the armor had cracked. He tore off the plate, tossed it aside, and sat back down beside the princess as if nothing had happened. "Dinner's going to be late," he muttered, pulling another ration pack from his kit. For the first time since her exile, Xylia laughed. It was a quiet, broken sound, but it was laughter. The days that followed turned whispers into legends. Locals began to gather near the plaza, pretending to shop but lingering just to catch glimpses of the human and the princess. Some claimed they had seen the Terran single-handedly crush assassins. Others whispered that he was a mercenary hired by a secret loyalist faction. The truth, that he had acted without orders, without pay, and without fear, was almost too unbelievable for the galaxy to accept. The nobles sent warnings. "Withdraw, human. Step away or you will share her fate." Darius ignored them. Instead, he used the plaza as his workshop. He scavenged scraps from the city, rebuilt drones from discarded mining bots, rewired old comores into short-range scanners. He even upgraded the princess's abandoned palace, rigging power back into its halls, relighting rooms that had gone dark since her exile. Every act was a declaration. Humanity does not abandon its own, nor does it fear standing beside the forsaken. Xylia watched in silence at first, then with growing unease. This man was turning her exile into something more. With each action, he chipped away at the invisible wall surrounding her. Finally, one night as the storms battered against the palace windows, she confronted him. "Do you understand what you are doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp. "They will not forgive you for this. They will kill you, human. They will burn your name from the stars." Darius leaned back against the wall, chewing a strip of synthetic rations, unfazed. "Wouldn't be the first time someone's tried. Earth's history is full of people who stood up when no one else would. Most of them died for it. But what mattered was that they stood." Her chest tightened. She had been taught that the Celestari were eternal, untouchable. But this fragile human, with his short life and battered armor, radiated something her entire empire seemed to lack: defiance in the face of the impossible. It was not arrogance. It was not duty. It was simply choice. And in that choice, Xylia began to see what her people could not. Humanity's strength was not measured in lifespans, technology, or tradition. It was in their refusal to bow, no matter who or what towered over them. The galaxy had abandoned its princess, but humanity had not. And in that act of defiance, the course of an empire was beginning to shift. The assassins had been only the beginning. Weeks after Darius's defiance made headlines across Vera 9, the Celestari Council realized their mistake. Exiling the princess was meant to silence her, yet somehow, thanks to one stubborn human, her name burned brighter than ever. Whispers of loyalty spread through back alleys. Soldiers once sworn to her father's crown exchanged secret glances, and mercenaries began to question which side of history they wanted to stand on. The council responded with escalation. Not subtle assassins this time, but advanced enemies bred for only one purpose: to annihilate. The first to arrive were the Graviton Enforcers, elite warriors in armor that bent local gravity fields. Each step they took cracked stone underfoot, their blades of compressed energy cutting not with heat but with sheer mass. Where they walked, the ground itself groaned. Xylia watched from the palace balcony as the enforcers marched toward the plaza, their forms shimmering in the lightning storms. The guards who once ignored her now fled, knowing what was to come. Even the locals scattered, leaving only Darius and his cobbled-together defenses. The princess's heart clenched. This is it. He cannot stand against them. But Darius didn't run. He had spent nights scavenging, repurposing alien circuitry, weaving Terran design into alien scrap. His drones now carried plasma siphons. His armor had makeshift grav field dampeners built from mining rigs, and his palace defenses were little more than patched-together turrets welded into the broken walls. Looked like junk. It was junk. But it was human junk. And humans had a way of making junk fight harder than any pristine weapon. When the enforcers closed in, Darius triggered the defenses. The plaza exploded into chaos. Homemade EMP bursts distorted gravity fields. Jury-rigged mines launched shards of ferroglass into the enforcers' joints, and the drones swarmed like hornets, stabbing with scavenged plasma cutters. The enforcers advanced anyway, their weapons bending gravity in violent arcs. A single strike sent one of Darius's turrets folding in on itself, crushed into a singularity the size of a fist. Another wave of gravity blades shattered drones mid-flight. But Darius didn't panic. He adapted. He switched tactics mid-battle, redirecting surviving drones into unpredictable flight patterns, circling like chaotic gnats instead of ordered soldiers. He used the enforcers' own gravity fields against them, baiting them into overloading their stabilizers. With every strike they landed, his suit recalibrated, learning their rhythm, twisting it back against them. In the end, it wasn't raw strength that felled the grav enforcers. It was chaos. It was unpredictability. It was human ingenuity. When the final enforcer collapsed, its armor sparking, Darius stood panting, his exosuit scorched and cracked. He tore his helmet off, sweat streaking his face, and looked at the princess with that same unshaken grin. Guess they don't make 'em like they used to. But the council was relentless. The next wave was not soldiers but bioengineered war beasts, creatures pulled from Celestari genetic vats. They were hulking monstrosities, scaled hides rippling with acid, jaws reinforced with metallic bone. They could leap walls in a single bound, tear through armored vehicles with ease, and track prey by heat, scent, and electromagnetic signature. Darius barely had time to patch his armor before they came. The beasts arrived in the dead of night, their roars shaking the palace walls. Xylia screamed as one lunged through the shattered gates. Darius was already there, rolling beneath its claws, slamming a salvage-charged EMP into its chest. The beast convulsed but didn't fall. "Of course you're tougher than that," Darius muttered, reloading his rifle with improvised thermal rounds. The fight raged through the palace halls. Darius used every trick he knew, leading the beasts into narrow corridors where their bulk slowed them, overloading palace conduits to electrocute them, and even baiting one into a collapsed balcony where it crashed to the courtyard below. What shocked Xylia most wasn't that he fought, it was how he fought. Each moment he turned failure into opportunity. A broken weapon became a trap. Collapsed ceiling became cover. He never fought with the rigid forms of her people. He fought like a storm, wild, unpredictable, impossible to contain. By dawn, the palace was in ruins, but the beasts were dead. Darius sat amid the wreckage, his armor smoking, one arm bleeding heavily, and simply muttered, "Breakfast is going to be late again." The princess stared at him, trembling. You should be dead. No one survives this." Darius laughed weakly. "You'll learn something about humans, princess. We don't do should." The council's fury reached its peak. If assassins, enforcers, and beasts could not finish the human, then they would unleash weapons that broke worlds. And so came the gravity-warping cannons, mounted on orbiting ships above Vera 9. Weapons designed not to kill swiftly but to crush. With a single pulse, they could twist a city into rubble, reducing palaces to dust and living beings to red mist. The skies split with their arrival. Xylia felt terror she had never known. Not even her empire's armies could stop such weapons. And yet, beside her, Darius simply stood on the palace roof, visor reflecting the warships above. His drones buzzed around him like fireflies, his patched armor barely holding together. "You can't fight this," Xylia whispered, her voice breaking. "No soldier can fight this." Darius's lips curved in that familiar, reckless grin. "Good thing I'm not just a soldier." He tapped his wrist console. The comm array he had scavenged over weeks crackled to life. Signals pulsed outward. Hijacked frequencies, scrambled codes. His drones launched skyward, carrying relay nodes he had secretly built from junk, each one chaining into a makeshift hacking net. Alien warships, centuries more advanced than anything Terran engineers had ever touched, suddenly found their systems infected by human code. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't clean. But it was chaos, raw, defiant human chaos. The gravity cannons stuttered, fired off target, even turned against their own ships as Darius laughed like a madman working miracles from scrap. The fleet withdrew, their commanders enraged, unable to comprehend how a single human could cripple their perfection. When it was over, the princess stood trembling, her people's enemies defeated again and again by what should have been impossible. Her silver eyes locked on Darius, who was stripping fried circuits from his drones to reuse later, as casual as a man fixing his boots after a long walk. "Why?" she whispered, voice thick with awe and confusion. "Why do you fight for me? I am nothing now. Fallen princess. A mark of shame." Darius looked at her, eyes steady. "Because, Xylia, you were left behind. And humans don't walk past those who are left behind. We fight, not because it's smart, not because it's safe, but because it's right." Her breath caught. In that moment, she understood something her people had forgotten. Power wasn't in weapons or empires. Power was in choice. And humanity's choice was always to defy. The night after the orbiting fleet withdrew, the palace lay in silence. Its halls were shattered, walls cracked, and debris scattered like bones. Yet at its heart, two figures remained. The last princess of the Celestari Empire and a battered human who refused to abandon her. Darius sat slouched against a broken pillar, his armor peeling away in scorched fragments. His chest rose and fell raggedly, exhaustion finally clawing at him. The drones that had once buzzed like guardians now hovered weakly, half their parts fried. Princess Xylia approached him slowly. She had not slept in days, haunted by the sound of collapsing ceilings, the screams of engineered beasts, and the roar of warships splitting the sky. And yet, when she looked at the human, she felt something impossible: hope. "You've given everything," she whispered. "Your strength, your machines, your blood. All for me." Darius cracked one eye open and gave a faint grin. "Don't flatter yourself, princess. I didn't do it for you." Her lips parted in shock. "I did it because no one else would. And because I'm human. And we don't leave people behind." For the first time, her eyes burned with tears. She had been born into power, raised to believe her lineage alone defined her worth. Yet this soldier, fragile, reckless mortal, had torn down that illusion with nothing but defiance and loyalty. In that moment she understood. What her empire lacked, what her people feared, humanity embodied. But peace was not yet theirs. The council, humiliated again and again, prepared a final strike. Not an assassin, not beasts, not ships. They planned to erase Vera 9 itself. A weapon older than her dynasty, hidden in the depths of space. A planet cracker designed to split worlds apart. The message was clear. If the princess would not die quietly, then the world that sheltered her would burn. Xylia trembled as she read the intercepted transmission from the council. The weapon was already en route. The planet had hours at most. She turned to Darius, panic breaking through her voice. "We cannot stop this. No weapon on this world can stand against theirs. Even your tricks cannot touch such power." Darius stood slowly, every movement strained from wounds, but his eyes were alight with that familiar fire. "You're right. I can't stop it." He tapped his comm array, broken but still functional enough to transmit. "But humanity can." He had been transmitting fragments of data for weeks, sending signals through patched-together arrays, bouncing them across smuggler nets and forgotten satellites. His messages carried one truth: a princess abandoned, a human defying an empire. And now the replies came. Rogue traders answering his call. Alien outcasts who saw a chance for justice. Loyalists who had remained silent out of fear, now emboldened by one Terran's defiance. And above all, a Terran fleet, small by Celestari standards but carrying the fury of a species that refused to bow. The skies erupted. Dozens of mismatched ships, human destroyers, stolen Celestari corvettes, freighters retrofitted with cannons, dropped out of warp above Vera 9. They were not the polished armadas of the Empire. They were scrappy, dented, burning with the spirit of rebellion. And at their heart, flying the fractured blue of Earth, came the human fleet. The planet cracker emerged from the void, a titan of death, its core already pulsing with destructive energy. "Now," Darius muttered, voice sharp as steel, "we show them what happens when humanity refuses to kneel." The battle was chaos. Celestari warships fired with clinical precision, their formations perfect. But the coalition fought like Darius himself, unpredictable, furious, alive. Human ships dove into impossible trajectories, outmaneuvering vessels that relied on flawless algorithms. Rogue traders overloaded their own drives to ram enemy frigates. Even outlawed AI warforms, liberated by Darius's signal, unleashed havoc on the Empire's pristine systems. And at the center of it all, Darius and Xylia transmitted commands, rallying allies who had once scattered in fear. The princess's voice, carried across comms, shook with both power and conviction. "I was abandoned. I was marked as shame. But one stood by me when none of you would. Human showed me what courage is. And now I ask you, stand with me. Not for bloodlines. Not for thrones. For choice. For freedom. For defiance. Her words struck deeper than any weapon. Soldiers turned their guns. Mercenaries hesitated. Some even defected mid-battle. The tide shifted. And finally, through chaos, sacrifice, and defiance, the coalition reached the planet Cracker. Human frigates dove into its firing line, shields burning, long enough for a final strike. Darius's drones, the last few still functional, carried an improvised warhead, cobbled together from scavenged plasma cores and overcharged mining explosives, straight into the weapon's unstable heart. The explosion lit the skies, brighter than any sunrise. The planet Cracker shattered, torn into fragments that scattered into the void. The world was saved. When the smoke cleared and the wreckage of enemy ships drifted in orbit, silence filled the battered command chamber. Aelira turned to Darius, her silver eyes shining. "You've done more than save me," she whispered. "You've reminded me what power truly is. Not fear. Not blood. Not empire. Choice. Defiance. Humanity." Darius, exhausted and half-conscious, managed a crooked smile. "Told you we don't leave people behind." In the weeks that followed, a movement ignited across the stars. The Celestari Empire, once unquestioned, now faced rebellion on every frontier. Alien species who had lived in fear found courage. And always at the center of every tale, one truth echoed. When the princess was abandoned, it was a human who stepped forward without fear. And that single act of defiance lit a fire that empires could not extinguish.